Hey MMA fans, Caged Minds, your host Micah Frankel, here to do our recap from UFC 146. The entire main event card was headlined by heavyweights, and we gave you predictions for all 12 bouts, so let's go through and recap what had happened from the action. Start off on the Facebook prelims. Mike Brown versus Daniel Pineda. We had predicted for Pineda to win with a late submission, being more technical and craftier than Brown, seeing what happened within the MMA game. Mike Brown, we knew he could win if he turned this into a wrestling match and used his top control. His strength, his top control, and his power is what did win most of the rounds. On the feet, Pineda was hurting Brown, but Brown's takedowns, his physical strength was able to counter technical sweeps of Pineda. Pineda did end the fight with a body triangle and landing strikes to Mike Brown from the back, looking for a rear naked choke, but Brown does pull out the decision, 29-28, so that's one wrong prediction for us. Next fight on those Facebook prelims was Kyle Kingsbury versus Glover Teixeira. We predicted for Teixeira to make an emphatic debut, first round TKO kind of stuff, and just beating up Kyle Kingsbury, go to the action, and that's basically what happened. His technical boxing was cleaner, better, an uppercut drops Kingsbury, and then Teixeira would advance, take in the back. Kingsbury would buck, giving up the mount. Teixeira would start landing some grounding pound, and when Kingsbury goes for a hip escape, he would open up his left arm too much, and Teixeira would be able to lock in an arm triangle. First round submission victory for Teixeira, and that was the kind of impactful stuff that we were looking for from his debut. Next fight, last of these Facebook prelims, was Jacob Volkman versus Paul Sass, and we had predicted for Volkman to win with a unanimous decision, controlling the rounds with his grappling. Well, that didn't work out. He did get the fight to the ground, he was on top, and after getting out of an omoplata attempt by Sass, Sass would then lock in his triangle. Volkman made a mistake letting his right wrist be controlled. Sass very dangerous with this position. Triangle armbar combination, very quick first round submission, and Sass does get a Submission of the Night award for that. Now we move on to the FX prelims. That started off with Dan Hardy versus Dwayne Ludwig. We had predicted for Ludwig to win a decision. I went so far as to say it'd be 29-28 in an all-striking battle. Also, I had thought that if anybody was going to go for a takedown, Dan Hardy would be the first one to go for that. And basically lived up to that one. Ludwig did start off looking better, using knees, landing strikes. Hardy trying to make it more of a grappling, using all of his MMA skills. It was a very even first round until Hardy, with an explosive left hook that we all know he possesses, catches Ludwig right in the chin, drops him, and then finishes the contest with some elbows on the ground, cutting Ludwig open. Hardy is a recipient of a Knockout of the Night award and a monkey off his back, stopping a 4-fight losing streak with the first round TKO. So we were wrong on that fight too. Now we move on to CB Dollaway versus Jason Mayhem Miller. Both guys were fighting basically to keep their spot in the UFC. We had predicted Miller to win with a submission, thought his jiu-jitsu was more technical, and also with his improving stand-up, thought he'd be able to give Dollaway fits on it, but we did recognize that Dollaway was the better wrestler, and we paid for it, as Miller did connect in the first round and in the second round, hurting Dollaway but could not capitalize. Miller came into the fight with a heavily bandaged left knee, already injured walking in. Dollaway, when hit and hurt, resorted back to his wrestling, used the wrestling, gets a 3-round decision. Very weird, I'd say, on the judges' scorecards, because it goes 29-28, 29-28, and 30-26. So odd from the judges. People were completely watching different fights somehow, but Dollaway did control a boring MMA match, lacking the fight parts when Mayhem was beating him up. Also, for some comedy relief, Mayhem did do his normal comedic reliefs, and one time in a clinch in the first round did noogie Dollaway, which was probably the highlight of the night comedically. But other than that, Dollaway won a wrestling match. Now we go to the next on those Facebook prelims, where Edson Barbosa was a 4-1 favorite over late replacement Jamie Varner, and we had went with the crowd basically and thought that Barbosa would win this fight. We predicted a unanimous decision. Varner had never been finished by a TKO, so thought it was pretty good that it would go all 3 rounds. And Barbosa came out landing big thunderous leg kicks, Varner did a really good job of pressuring, staying in his face, and with that, landing strikes, mixing in the strikes with the takedown attempts. Got a takedown. Barbosa popped right back up. Varner still swinging with the punches. Hurt Barbosa. Barbosa was literally running away from Varner. Varner lands another right, dropping Barbosa. Barbosa's on the ground trying to go for a leg lock, and Varner uses the hammer fist to pound it out. A first-round TKO, like we said, 4-1 underdog in Vegas. That was a huge statement. Big comeback to the big show for Jamie Varner. Edson Barbosa, back to the drawing board. Better luck next time. And then the last of the FX prelims. Ultimate Fighter winner, Diego Brandao, took on Darren the Damage Eccles. We had predicted a second-round TKO for Brandao. Every round starts off on the feet. Brandao was explosive and dominant in the first round, even took the fight to the ground, was dominant from side control, landing elbows, beating up Elkins. In the second round, again, started off pretty well for Brandao, landing combinations, hurting Elkins with knees, but as Brandao went to throw an axe kick, he slips, falls, Elkins jumps on top, and controlled his way through the rest of the round, and then basically went right for the takedown in the third round. From my opinion, I could have scored that fight a draw because of the damage that Brandao was doing on the feet and his dominance in the first round versus the control factor of Darren Elkins. But the judges felt the second round, most of it was on the ground, and Elkins got it. 29-28. Elkins wrestled his way and toughed out his way through a fight, making it an MMA match, controlling the grappling. Great decision from him. Diego Brandao in a learning experience, seeing he can't knock everyone out in the first round. Both of those will be a learning experience. Elkins, though, quietly a 3-fight win streak at featherweight. Time to think of him as getting a top 10 contender within that UFC featherweight division and making his way up. Now we move on to what we're all really looking forward to. It was the heavyweights, those full pay-per-view card full of heavyweights. Started off with Stefan Skyscraper Struve versus Big LeVar Johnson. Coming into this fight, it was basically Struve wins by submission, having 15 victories by the submission, and Johnson having 4 of his 5 losses from the submission, or Johnson would win with a TKO. 15 of his 17 victories were from the TKO, and Struve did have 4 of his 5 losses from the TKO. So we all knew it was going to happen. Johnson came in, ripping thunderous hooks, came across the cage, being aggressive, attacking Struve. Struve enacts the clinch, gets an overhook, pulls guard, and gets an armbar in the first round. Stefan Struve is our second Submission of the Night award winner. There was no Fight of the Night award winner, so we had 2 on Submission of the Night that we told you, Sass and Struve. Hardy with a knockout of the night, and another knockout of the night still yet to come. Struve, impressive. What do we know about Stefan Struve? That was a very smart, a great enacted game plan, a smart way of fighting. He got in there, he finished effectively, won the fight dominantly, and took it to where he felt comfortable. And also the smarts was not playing around with the striking, letting Johnson get in a clinch, and then taking control using the grappling. For Johnson, he is what we know he is. He's a knockout artist that very much lacks in the grappling and in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of the game. Moving on, next fight, this was the 2 young undefeated heavyweights, Stipe Miocic versus Shane Del Rosario. We had picked Miocic to win this fight with unanimous decision. His wrestling and also his activeness that we've seen him in Del Rosario coming off of the injury. Didn't know enough about him, didn't feel well about this fight as I didn't own Showtime before his injury, so I hadn't seen Del Rosario, but thought this could go very closely. But we had Miocic. And basically, Del Rosario, with his Muay Thai championship background, comes out landing big thunderous blows to the midsection, really going after the liver shots against Miocic. The diversiveness of the striking of Del Rosario really was confusing Miocic. Miocic only really throwing his hands, seemed one-dimensional. But towards the end of the first round that was all striking, Miocic does get the takedown and realizes he can rely on his wrestling. In the second round, all Miocic's wrestling, gets the takedown, uses elbows from the half guard, beats up Del Rosario, gets the second round TKO. Miocic now 3-0 in the UFC, and he's taken out another rising young upcomer. So Miocic keeps on going, keeps that hype train rolling, and now Rosario back to the drawing board to work on that defensive wrestling or to be more active off of his back if he does end up in those bad positions. Next fight that we're talking about, Roy Big Country Nelson versus Dave Pee Wee Herman. Dave Herman, he came in on late notice. We predicted that Roy Nelson would win this with his wrestling, his grappling, getting unanimous decision. I didn't know if he'd be able to finish Herman. Herman's pretty tough and is very good at enacting the scrambles, but I thought Nelson would rely on his jiu-jitsu, his weight, his controlling, kind of how he did throughout the Ultimate Fighter. We didn't even get far enough to see that. The action starts, and Dave Herman's trying to use the teat kick, the push kick, keep the distance, but as they come in a striking range, one big overhand right from Roy Nelson, and we have a first-round knockout. Roy Nelson is the other recipient of a Knockout of the Night award, and emphatically dropped Pee Wee Herman just straight down. Herman went from standing to butt, and it was devastating. So Big Country, gotta love the beard, gotta love the hair, gotta love that one-punch knockout power. A lot quicker fight than I thought it would be. Glad to see it, though. Next fight now, the co-main event. Cain Velasquez versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. We had predicted first round, second round TKO. Thought it'd be a ground and pound TKO, and that Cain would come back relentlessly aggressive after losing the title. And we go to the action. Bigfoot throws one kick. Velasquez grabs it, pulls him down. First elbow he throws cuts right between the middle of the eyes of Bigfoot Silva. Bigfoot is ground and pounded, a first round TKO, and he was a bloody mess. This was devastating. This was with a statement, and Cain Velasquez back on track in a big way. Now we go up to the main event of the night, Junior Dos Santos, his first heavyweight title defense, taking on Frank Mir, two-time UFC heavyweight champion. We had predicted a third round TKO for Junior Dos Santos. Big fan of Frank Mir. We knew he had to get it to the ground, but just predicted that Sagano has too much speed. He has too much striking ability, that he would just bludgeon Mir really and beat him up, and that's what happened. Mir only got really one good attempt at a takedown in the first round, had a single leg, couldn't get it, tried to even drop down, pull guard, get a leg lock, did not work. Dos Santos, punches and bunches, great combinations, beat up Mir in the second round. Biggest part was Mir started working leg kicks again. An overhand right from Dos Santos that's right in the eye of Mir, drops Mir. He jumps on top, starts trying to pound out Mir, and as he goes to kind of get a wrestling waistlock position, Dos Santos, Mir reaches to grab for the arm. Dos Santos runs out of the position, not wanting to grapple like we knew all well. And as Mir feels him getting away, Mir tries to lunge after Dos Santos from his knees and just rolls onto his back. And at that moment, you could tell every punch that he took just came into him. He could feel that his equilibrium was off. Fell overdone, and Dos Santos hops back on. Another hammer fist for good measure. Herb Dean stops the fight. Junior Dos Santos is still the heavyweight champion of the world. Second round TKO, 1 round earlier than I predicted. So, Dos Santos, dominant. What's relevant coming from this? Like we said, Struve is dangerous. Sass is dangerous. Hardy's back on track. Nelson's dangerous. Oh yeah, and Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos 2 is a must. Some people feel that the first one, just 6 months ago, and such a decisive win by Dos Santos. Why would we have it? Because with such a decisive win by Velasquez and Dos Santos, they both again have proved that they are the number 1 and 2 relevant heavyweights that are not accused of cheating in the sport. All that being said, Overeem gets off of his punishment is suspension, and there's a chance that the UFC will throw him in a title fight. But again, I just don't love the cheater. Dos Santos versus Velasquez 2. Can't wait to it. Hope this time both men come in happy and put on the show that we all hope to see. And for the people that are wondering, Caged Minds, we are 5-7 on our picks this time. I was underestimating of the wrestling ability of Elkins and of Dollaway. Underestimated that submission ability of Paul Sass. And really, the Struve-Johnson fight felt like it was a coin toss. I underestimated the fight intelligence of Stefan Struve. We were 5-7. I am going to try to do better next time, be more diligent on my studying. This has been Caged Minds. Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Uncage the warrior within yourself. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.